Have you ever wondered what really happened between Mufasa and Scar? We all know Scar as the villain who killed his own brother to steal the throne. But the Lion King movie only shows us the tragic end of their story. What sparked such a deep, burning hatred? Was Scar always this evil? Or did something happen long ago that twisted him into the monster we see? The official story is much darker and more complex than you might think. Let's travel back in time. While your older brother is literally named King, right from the start, the odds were stacked against Taka. He was the second son, forever living in the shadow of the glorious Mufasa, being the heir, was always by his side. He was the golden child in every sense of the word. And then there was Taka. Queen Uru was a loving mother, but she also had her own responsibilities. This often left Taka feeling overlooked and unimportant. This feeling of being second best wasn't just in his head. The animals of the Pride Lands also treated them differently. He was just the spare, the backup prince. He started to believe that the only way to get respect, Taka wasn't as physically strong as Mufasa, but he was incredibly intelligent, cunning. Even he knew he couldn't beat his brother in a fair fight. So, he started using his mind. He began to associate with the shadier characters of the Pride Lands, the ones who lived on the fringes of society. The hyenas. Specifically, he befriended a trio of young hyenas you might recognize. Shenzi, Bonze, and Ed. They were outcasts. Who's like him? They understood what it felt like to be looked down upon, to be considered worthless. They shared his hunger for power and respect, and they didn't care about the circle of life. In their company, Taka didn't feel like dirt. He felt powerful. He felt seen. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Taka, driven by jealousy and a desire to prove his own worth, hatched a plan. He wanted to make Mufasa look weak and foolish in front of their father. He told Mufasa about a water buffalo named Boma, who was refusing to share a waterhole, a crucial resource during a terrible drought. Taka framed it as a challenge. He goaded Mufasa, telling him that a true king should be able to handle such a problem on his own, without their father's help. Mufasa, ever eager to prove himself a worthy heir, fell right into the trap. He went to confront Boma alone. But Taka had already manipulated the situation. He had whispered to Boma that Mufasa was coming to take the waterhole by force, a direct challenge to Boma's authority over his herd. So when Mufasa arrived, Boma wasn't willing to talk. He was ready for a fight. The situation escalated quickly, and Boma charged. Mufasa, though strong, was overwhelmed by the massive, angry buffalo, seeing his plan go terribly wrong. Taka had a moment of panic, but it was quickly replaced by a twisted sense of opportunity. He called on his hyena friends, Shenzi Bonsai and Ed, not to help Mufasa, but to attack Boma's herd from the other side. His idea was to create chaos, hoping it would somehow make him look like the hero who saved the day. The plan backfired spectacularly. The hyena's attack sent the entire buffalo herd into a panicked stampede, right towards Mufasa was in serious danger of being trampled to death. At that moment, a lion's roar echoed across the plains. It was King Ahadi. He had arrived just in time, but the chaos was too great, even for him. As the buffalo stampeded, one of them, in a desperate attempt to escape the hyenas, slashed out with its horns. It wasn't Mufasa who was hit, it was Taka. The horns raked across his face, leaving a deep, bleeding gash over his eye. The pain was immense, but the emotional wound was even deeper. His plan to humiliate Mufasa had ended with his own injury and Mufasa being saved by their father, once again looking like the victim. After Ahadi and the other lions managed to control the stampede, the truth came out. Rafiki, the wise mandrill, had seen Taka with the hyenas and understood his treacherous plan. The confrontation with his father was brutal. Ahadi wasn't just disappointed, he was furious. He saw the darkness and jealousy in Taka's heart, but the most cutting remark came from Taka himself. As he looked at his reflection in a pool of water, seeing the wound that would forever mark him, he declared that he would no longer be called Taka. From that day forward, he would be known by his wound. He would be known as Scar. This was the turning point. By adopting the name Scar, he was embracing his pain, his resentment, and his identity as an outcast. He was no longer just the jealous brother. He was a villain in the making. The scar on his face became a permanent, physical reminder of his hatred for Mufasa and his failed attempt to one-up him. It fueled his ambition and solidified his belief that he could never win his father's love or respect through legitimate means. The only path left for him was one of betrayal and violence. From that day on, the relationship between the two brothers was shattered beyond repair. Mufasa, though perhaps he pitied his brother, could never fully trust him again. He had seen the depths of Scar's jealousy, and Scar, he spent his years honing his intellect, plotting in the shadows, and nurturing his alliance with the hyenas. He was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The perfect moment to take everything Mufasa had. The kingdom, the power, and the title of king. The incident at the waterhole wasn't just a childhood squabble. It was the birth of Scar, the day a prince named Taka died, and a legendary villain was born. And so, when we see Scar on Pride Rock years later, watching the presentation of his nephew Simba, we're not just seeing a jealous uncle. We're seeing a lion whose entire life has been defined by one moment of failure. One scar that represents a lifetime of feeling second best. His line, "Life's not fair, is it?" isn't just a cynical remark. It is the core belief that has driven his every action since he was a young prince named Taka. It's a chilling reminder that the most terrible villains are often not born evil, but are made, forged in the fires of jealousy, neglect, and a single, defining scar. What do you think? Does knowing Scar's backstory change how you see him? It certainly adds a layer of tragedy to his villainy. It doesn't excuse his actions, of course, but it helps us understand the path that led him to. And Taka, smaller, clever, but perpetually overlooked. The name Taka itself means dirt or waste in Swahili. Imagine growing up with a name like that, a constant reminder of your perceived lesser status. While Mufasa was groomed for the throne, learning the delicate balance of the circle of life, Taka was often left to his own devices. His resentment wasn't born in a vacuum. It was nurtured day by day. He saw the admiration in his father's eyes for Mufasa. He heard the cheers of the pride for Mufasa. Every sunrise that cast Mufasa's shadow longer than his own was another small cut. Taka believed he was smarter, more strategic. He saw Mufasa's trust in others as naivety, his adherence to tradition as a weakness. He felt he deserved the crown. But the laws of succession were absolute. He needed another way. This burning ambition led Taka to the shadowy fringes of the Pride Lands, to the elephant graveyard. It was there he found his first real allies, or so he thought. The hyenas, Shenzi, Bonsai, and Ed. They were outcasts, who's like him, hungry for respect and power. They saw in Taka a ticket to a better life. A life with full bellies and a place at the top of the food chain. Taka saw them as tools, a private army to help him achieve his goals. It was a union, forged in mutual desperation and a shared disdain for Mufasa's rule. Taka devised a cunning plan. He would prove his superiority to his father and the pride once and for all. He told Mufasa that a rogue water buffalo was terrorizing the herds near the gorge and that Taka would handle it alone. It was a lie. Of course, his real plan was to use the hyenas to create a stampede, corner the buffalo, and emerge as the hero. Mufasa, ever the noble brother, refused to let Taka go alone. He insisted on helping, seeing it as his duty to protect his younger brother, no matter how foolish his plans. Taka agreed, but his scheme shifted. This was his chance to get Mufasa out of the way for good. He instructed the hyenas to provoke not just one buffalo, but the entire herd. The ground began to tremble as the stampede thundered towards them. Mufasa used his incredible strength to save Taka, pushing him to safety. But in the chaos, Mufasa was cornered. It was then that one of the largest buffaloes charged, its massive horns catching Taka across the eye. As he tried to scramble away, the pain was blinding, a searing agony that would leave a permanent mark. Mufasa, battered but alive, managed to fight off the buffalo and drive away the herd. He found his brother bleeding and unconscious. When Taka awoke, the first thing he saw was the concern on Mufasa's face, but he didn't feel gratitude or felt same. His plan had failed spectacularly, and not only had his perfect brother saved him again, but he was now permanently disfigured. The physical wound was deep, but the wound to his pride was deeper. From that day forward, he was no longer Taka. He insisted everyone call him Scar, a constant, bitter reminder of his failure and the brother he despised. This event wasn't just about getting a cool villain name. It was the turning point. It cemented his hatred for Mufasa, transforming his jealousy into a murderous obsession. The scar on his face became a symbol of his rage, a promise to himself that one day he would succeed. The union with the hyenas, once a simple partnership of convenience, now became a deadly pact sworn to regicide. He learned a crucial lesson that day. Brute force and ambition weren't enough. He needed to be more patient, more manipulative. He would spend years cultivating his network, poisoning the minds of those who felt disenfranchised, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He observed Mufasa's greatest strength, his love for his family, and realized it was also his greatest weakness. A weakness Scar would one day exploit with devastating precision. The birth of Simba was the final nail in the coffin of Scar's ambition. At least through any legitimate means, he was no longer even second in line. He was nothing. This pushed him over the edge. From a bitter plotter to a cold-blooded killer, his earlier failure at the gorge became the blueprint for his next attempt. Another stampede, another gorge. But TS Team, he wouldn't be there to get scarred. He would be the puppet master, pulling the strings from above. The rest, as we know, is history. The tragedy in the gorge, the famous lie. Long live the king, and the dark years that followed. But it all started with a young prince named Taka, who just wanted to be seen. His story is a dark, cautionary tale about how envy, when left to fester, can rot a soul from the inside out. The union that shaped him wasn't just with the hyenas. It was a union of pride, ambition, and a deep-seated resentment that a single scar brought into horrifying focus. He wasn't born a monster. He was made into one, by circumstance, by choice, and by the shadow of a brother he could never escape. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about Scar's backstory? Does it make him a more sympathetic character, or just a more complex villain? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from behind the animation. See you next time.